5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
You're listening to Working Forward, presented by Symetra, in partnership with NASA Reimagined. In this limited podcast series, hosted by Harry Monty, Laura Dinan-Haber, Paul Tyler, and Todd Zen, we explore the future of work from a variety of viewpoints and discuss the challenges and opportunities ahead.
Hello, and welcome to the Working Forward podcast. I'm Todd Zen, one of your hosts, and we are thrilled that you have joined us as we continue our exploration of the future of work. I am extremely excited for this episode. Been really looking forward to recording it. And that's because we've got some guests here that could not be better positioned to opine on our key topic, the future of work. They join us from the employee benefit broker industry, and they are on the front lines working with employer clients, helping them manage through the implications of the future of work. So really excited to welcome them into the program. But before we do, I want to introduce our hosts. So first, Harry Monty, head of the group benefits here at Symetra. Harry, hello. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Todd. Thanks for the quick intro. Looking forward to this one as well. I agree with you. We've talked about so much in our previous episodes, and these gentlemen here are well positioned right in the midst of consulting with employers on this exact same thing. So I think it's going to be a great discussion.
Excellent. Thanks, Harry. Great to have you. So we also have our friends from NASA Reimagined, although we only have one friend today. Unfortunately, Paul Tyler had a conflict and wasn't able to join us, but Laura Dinan-Haber is here. Laura, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Todd. It's great to be back. And, I hope everyone had a chance to catch our recap episode. It really outlined a lot of things that we had been discussing, and that set up today's conversation quite well. So I'm excited to jump in.
Excellent. Well, without further ado, let's bring in our guests. So first, we've got Dale Alexander. He joins us from Alexander & Company, recently acquired by Hub International. So Dale, welcome to the show. Would you mind introducing yourself to our audience and maybe giving them a little bit of background on what you do?
Appreciate it. Thank you, Todd, Harry, y'all for having us. Alexander & Company for 27 years. All we've focused on is school systems, K-12 schools, very niche defined. And so proud to be associated with Hub International as of this past June. And let me say, if it looks like I'm in a hotel room, I'm at the Don Cesar in St. Pete, because my wife would never have that in our room. Appropriate here, not at the Alexander household. So thank you all for having me, Laura. Appreciate it. Glad to be with you all.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dale. Welcome. So next we've got Simon Samai joining us from Mercer. Simon, hello. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you? Good to be here. Simon Samai, just a little bit about me. National practice leader for a few businesses. One is what we call LAD, an acronym you'll hear: Life Absence Disability, Voluntary Benefits, and Executive Benefits. And excited to be on with everybody.
Absolutely. Happy to have you. So, and last but not least, we've got Jeff Hughes joining us from Alliant. Jeff, hello. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Todd. Nice to meet you guys. Jeff Hughes. I practice out of Santa Barbara, California. Our corporate headquarters is based out of Irvine, California. And I'm one of the partners in the employee benefits space for California Marketplace for Employee Benefits.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show, and thank you all for joining us. So I know Harry is just chomping at the bit to ask you a question, so let me hand it over to him to get us started.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. So I'm going to start with a pretty broad question, right? Because we've been through a number of episodes now where we've talked about several macro trends, from remote work to generational differences, the impact technology has had on how we work. It's a long list of things that employers are trying to navigate as they think about the future of work, and really making sure that they're positioning themselves well as an employer of choice. So I'd love to get your perspective on how your business has changed over the last few years. And it's a two-part question, so I'm going to start with a two-parter. The first part is really curious about how your own firm has changed, right? As an employer and as someone who works at a firm, how has your work experience changed And then the second part is how have things changed in the way that you serve your clients? So I'm going to go to Simon first.
Well, I'd say as it relates to changes, right, I'd say I have, hopefully it's not too long-winded, but I'd say there's three buckets. I call it choices, voices, and culture, right? If you think about what's the biggest changes, it's no longer I come to work, here are my benefits, here's the decisions I make. It's, the dynamic of COVID and what's occurred since then. Organizations are reflecting, and they're reflecting, okay, when I make a decision to outsource or consider a partner, how does this represent my culture? In essence, I'm outsourcing my culture. That's one. Two, voices and choices, right? If you have a choice, your employees will have a voice, meaning the old days of if you put in a plan, come from home office, and it came in a certain way, an employee may or may not have been happy with the results, and and maybe their feedback may have been discounted because here's the plan. Now that employee has a voice, right? If the organization's made a choice to outsource and give it a benefit, that employee has a voice and can escalate and say, hey, does not align with how you hired me, why I'm staying, and where I'm at in my life. And so while there's this easy way of saying things have gotten more complex and folks are demanding more, I just think it's there's more of an introspective view. So I'd say that's the three biggest things that I've seen in our journey in evaluating is understanding that it's one part of organizational cultural decision. That choice is impacted the culture, but that choice is giving voices to others. And if you solve those three items, that's where you're aligned with an organization's mission. So it's no longer, and if you notice what I said there, none of it was related to a benefit and offering a solution. It was really connected to the mission and then building around it. Hopefully that makes sense, Harry.
That's great, Simon. Thank you. Jeff, you want to comment?
Yeah, I think, I'll take a little different perspective on how business has changed a little bit. I think, having been in an employee benefits space for going on 30 years, I think that the compliance level at both the state and federal level has just made it very taxing on employers, right, to navigate the healthcare system and really just to navigate their business. So I think a lot of our businesses becoming experts in compliance, communication, wellness, you can name the topic. And I think that has become kind of the nuance of where many employers lean heavily on us, right, as broker consultants to kind of guide them down those paths. I think that is, I don't foresee that changing anytime soon. I look at what we've done, like I said, been doing this many decades. We are expected to be experts at a lot of things. And so I think that has changed considerably. So I think when you look at, I came from a smaller firm to Alliant. Obviously the breadth, I think Dale can speak this as well. When you're with a larger firm with more resource, more capabilities, Simon's obviously with a large firm, those services get tapped quickly by employers, because I think there's so much pressure, downward pressure on the employers to kind of meet the needs of managing their healthcare spend. And I kind of remind my staff all the time, what we do is important, but our clients are in business because they sell something, they service something, they develop something. The insurance is a byproduct of owning a business. And so we need to kind of remove a lot of the obstacles for our clients to be able to do what they do best. And it's very complex. So we're constantly looking at things. How do we, bring things quicker, faster to our clients, while also kind of trying to keep a good balance between our responsibilities and the employer responsibilities? As I think Dale and probably agree, it's a fine tightrope at times.
Great, thanks. And Dale, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, back in 2000, we started putting all of our clients online with technology, and nobody was doing it. It was just very difficult, and we just kept failing forward, as John Maxwell says. And so we found ourselves kind of leading in technology, at least. Then we get a call center. And so what COVID did is kind of, we had been kind of pre-COVID before COVID ever hit. I mean, we had been teaching virtually. We had been enrolling virtually, taking call centers virtually. Our staff had been able to be remote wherever they worked. And COVID kind of made everybody get to that level. It's fascinating because, I mean, I had friends that owned brokers that had to go buy their employees' laptops. So it made everybody get to where we were. It's fascinating because, I mean, we had been we had been COVID proof before COVID proof hit, but now everybody had to get there. So you had to learn how to think, how to teach out of the box, how to enroll out of the box, how to take call center out of the box and get there pretty fast. So we kind of saw everybody rise to what we've been trying to do and trying to perfect. So it was really fascinating to watch that.
Yeah, Dale, before we move on to the next question, I'll just comment on that because as a carrier who works with many producer partners across the industry, we saw that, right? We saw which firms were where in that evolution around technology, and it was really interesting. And the carriers were in very different places as well. I think that put a lot of pressure on employers in many situations, and luckily everyone pivoted pretty quickly and were able to get to where they needed to be. So it's a good call out.
If I could say here, I mean, to the granular effect of just how, E of I's and just the enrollment kind of journey that people can go through in products today, it's gotten, much more guarantee issue. E of I's are paperless now, and all of that had to happen because people weren't sitting down in front of people. So, COVID did some bad things. It did some good things. And part of this is one of the good things that COVID did in our business.
Yeah, and staying on the trend of change, I'll put the question out there. Do you see changes in how individuals are working? I'd be shocked if anyone said no to that. But, what changes are you seeing in how individuals are working? What type of work are they doing? Has that changed? Where they're working? What kind of impacts have all that had on the types of benefits that are being offered within the workplace? I'd say let's start with Simon on this one.
Yeah. Hey, Laura, and I'll tie it to my what I said previously, but I'll go a little bit deeper. And for everybody talking, I was really giving more of that employer view versus just the Mercer, but I'm going to tie the both together. If you think of somebody working from home, and again, those three buckets I mentioned earlier, they're naturally seeing everything through their world in their home. Okay, so when you go into an office, you see your organizational logo, you see your coworkers that you work with 10, 15 years, you see the mission around, you see what's happening. You might even see your clients in the office, but when you're working from home and you're in your home environment, so you have your home reality, there's a part where you have to, again, connect those missions, right? And so I think there's ways now in this new way of work is how do you connect, I'd say, missions, priorities, and balancing it with where somebody's at in their own days. And I think our clients are feeling that out too. The formality of meetings, right? When do you need meetings? Prioritization. So I do think this looking at everything is allowing us to reset and say, okay, what did we need to keep? And what can we jettison, right? Did we have meetings just because we had meetings? Were we evaluating talent through geographics versus just looking at roles a little bit differently? So I think there's an evaluation going on and saying the old norms may have been tied to coming into an office or being tied to a geographic, which is okay. Now you can look at things broadly and be a little bit more efficient. But the next part, Laura, that I think that we also have to look at is being tied to a culture makes things a little bit more efficient. Because if you have one problem come up and everybody's working from home, if somebody thinks they have 50 unique problems, where if you're in an office, maybe it's like, hey, we have one solution because you're seeing each other, that chit-chatting in between calls and meetings. So it's balancing that there's some benefits with streamlining and looking at talent versus just being tied to geographics. You might have more flexibility and scale, but can you scale your culture at home? Can you scale that mission where somebody feels safe, comfortable, and a little bit more efficient? So to me, it's like finding that balancing act. And I think everybody's, whether it's on our side of the house that Dale and Jeff are going through or employers, everybody's finding their rhythm. And I think now that we're out and we're traveling and it's getting kind of back to normal, you could see folks flexing different muscles in the new world. I think next year we'll probably, everybody will have a little bit more of a established cadence. but that's, balance and finding it. I think that's the theme for this year. I think you'll see a better rhythm next year.
Yeah, I would
love
jump
that.
in,
It's
Laura,
true.
to Simon's
Go ahead,
point.
Jeff.
I think when COVID first hit, I remember being at home. My son was supposed to be off in college and couldn't go. And I remember my first day of Zoom calls, he came downstairs at one point and was like, "How many more calls do you have today?" I'm like, "About 8 more." And so he was blown away by that. And I think to Simon's point, I think tying that culture, right? I think that when COVID hit and, shutdowns happened, et cetera, the use of technology is either our friend or our enemy, right? I think at one hand, you would start seeing like people loading up your Zoom meetings. And I think it's gotten better because I think it's also forced us to be better at saying, okay, what's the agenda topic today? If we can get this done in 30 minutes, right, we'll do it in 30 minutes. We don't need a full hour. If we can do these things without traveling, right, there's some efficiency gain for sure. I think employers, I think we've seen it in our organization, where you can be in front of a client that's not, in your same zip code, right? You can get things done quicker. I think it's forced us as an employee, as a brokerage firm to be very good at the online piece, which is, treat it like you were in a meeting, right? Which is a little bit different, but making sure you have an agenda, making sure you are clear. We've done a lot of finalist presentations all remote, right? And it's kind of different, right? It's a different model when you're not shaking people's hands and getting to know them personally, but you're still engaging them. You've got to be really good on the technology side to make that happen. But I think that, to answer your question too, I think it's helped our folks. I think we've had to balance it out, right? I think folks goes back to Simon's point, working from home I personally do not like working from home. I'm in an office today. I've been in an office the whole time. I think we're all built differently in that regard, but I think it's really important that we protect our employees' time so they can have a separation between, work and play. And that's hard when you've got young kids. Fortunately, my kids are older. But I've got, team members with young kids. That's a challenge when you're working from home, right? And so we're seeing a lot of employers start to adapt more programs around that to fit their culture, right, for their employees.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally have a 7-year-old and a 16-month at home. And my 7-year-old at the beginning of the pandemic, still 4 at that point, driving a little Matchbox car over my head during one of our podcast recordings because he thought the people on the computer were fun, right? He had never seen that before. And now he's like, ugh, how many more of these do you have, Mom? So I completely agree. And you're right in that there is an interesting shift where we could leave the office before. And today I am sitting in our office. But for those who are still working at home or prefer that method, they don't have the car to get into, to close, to then put the wall between work and life. Dale, what are some of your thoughts on this?
I think the great migration is still out there. Here's something awesome. I wasn't expecting this, but a broker friend of mine from South Carolina, I'd never thought of this. And we were at this group, and he said, I'm losing employees. He was in Greenville, South Carolina. And he said, I'm losing employees to New Jersey and Miami because these firms are calling my employees and offering them $20,000 more than I can pay them. And it's still $10,000 less than they're paying in New Jersey and Miami. And they can work anywhere. And they didn't care. And he goes, I'm getting poached by people all over the country. I'm just thinking locally, but this thing has changed. By the way, a 59-year-old owner, I'm the worst one to ask, what do I think about work? I want everybody in the office, right? I mean, that's what we as leaders, everybody should be in the office. I'm the worst one to ask about that. But I'd never thought about getting poached from places all over the country, and it was still less than they were paying in their market and much more than he could keep up with. I'd never thought about that. Interesting. I think, by the way, we're created for community. I think we're created to be around each other. And hopefully this comes back to the norm and people, we want to get back closer and be around people. So.
Yeah, so if I could jump in, kind of a similar theme, but one of the things we've heard and talked a lot about in our other episodes is a real need for workday flexibility from employees and frankly an expectation for it. And I'm interested in how you guys view that, because it seems like that definition of full-time employee might be shifting as well. You've got more gig workers, temporary workers, consultants, a lot of things added to the mix. And, I think historically, what you guys have done is really advise your employer clients on benefit strategies for full-time employees. And I'm interested, have you found the conversations shifting at all with your employer clients? Is there an interest in some of these other workers that maybe are working in non-traditional shifts, or are there other things that you're doing from a benefit strategy when you look at the fact that people are working different times, sometimes in the office, sometimes at home, things of that nature? Dale, maybe we could start with you. I don't know if it's as relevant for the clients you work with, but I'm interested in, are those sorts of things coming up?
So I remember I'm 100% schools. Schools are a different bird, but there are organizations that have kind of fractional employees that go around to maybe 15 or 16 different school systems, and it's not a PEO, but something like that. So we see that in a different model, but in my world, not so much. A teacher's got to teach, cafeteria's got to be at the cafeteria.
No, that makes sense. My wife is a teacher. She talks a lot about her lack of workday flexibility, so that does definitely resonate with me. Jeff, how about you?
I think I think hybrid's the new reality, right? I think that if I've got employers that have kind of, some employers are I got a light manufacturing client of mine. I was spending time with the CEO, and they've never lived the world without COVID, right? They kept going. So, but that does create a nuance between an organization that has light manufacturing and then you've got your white collar, engineers, accounting, et cetera. And so, there's a balancing act between someone who has to come in because their job requires them to be on the floor doing things versus an accountant within his organization that could be hybrid. You got to make sure, it goes back to Simon's point, that cultural piece is critical because you don't want an us versus them mentality. I think the hybrid world is kind of where we're at. If at Alliant, we are a hybrid environment, right? Most of my clients are in a position where, they're looking for best talent anywhere. I was sharing with someone the other day, a lot of my clients now, it's not uncommon for me to have clients historically in the past where they were local to, let's say, California, right? Geography wise. I'm working with decision makers now in Florida, New York, Chicago, right? So it's, I think employers have realized we can open up our talent opportunities by having a hybrid model, which allows us to go find the talent that best fits what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that's great. I think it's wonderful. I think it's also important as employers think through this, how do you still maintain that level of culture that Simon's alluded to? Because at the end of the day, people want to be a part of something. I think to Dale's point, community is important. And if you're working from home or you don't feel connected to a brand or a company or a culture, how committed are they to you long term, right? And that's concerning, right?
Yeah, great thoughts. Simon, anything to add on this one?
Yeah, actually, tie it back to the balancing act. One of the things that we're going through, and I'm sure Jeff and Dale and frankly everybody on this call is going through it. So, get everybody to the office. But we've taught everybody to, have 10 to 12 hours of back-to-back calls. But now you've added an hour commute, and then you come into the office at 10 hours of back-to-back calls. So the idea is when somebody comes into an office, make it meaningful. Why are you here, right? And again, when I come into the office as somebody that has a senior role in the firm, I can't afford to have 10 hours of back-to-back because it defeats the purpose of me coming in. Because if there's a new colleague or one of my direct reports or somebody in the office that it'd be just great to have a cup of coffee with, how are you doing? What can I do to help you? A fellow leader, another business line, that's what it's all about. But if I show up and I'm in an office working, then it says, well, I should work from home. And we don't want folks to say that. And to Jeff's point, hybrids are reality. That's a good thing. But what are you going to do when you come in the office versus what you do at home? And then giving permission to, it doesn't have to be, because you're at home, that doesn't mean that every open space on your calendar somebody has to touch, because that's not the reality when you're in the office. On the flip side, when you come into the office, that shouldn't be just 4 or 5 hours of open space. So it's that balance, it's that rhythm of it shouldn't be all or nothing. It should be a little of something in between, and then finding that happy medium. And again, I think as leaders, we have to model it and then bring it along. And then, somebody's going to have their version of this story 5, 10 years from now, and they'll bring somebody else along. So that's another example of balance.
Yeah, if I could just build on that for a second, because we've talked a lot about event-based attendance, right? To get people interested in coming back into the office and see where it goes from there. Even that has its challenges. When you've been hiring across the country for 3 years now in a very remote environment to attract talent, people have moved around, right? Because they know they can work from anywhere. When you start to have an event-based activity to get people into the office, how do you then not exclude a part of your population? And so you have to have the right technology to have it feel like an inclusive event meeting in the office. It's gotten much more complicated, and I think balance is the right word. That's come up several times now. But I also agree it's definitely here to stay, no doubt.
Yeah, it's interesting to that point, and finding opportunities for employees to feel as though they're both giving and receiving from the company. I'll pick on an employee resource group we have here. It's called the Green Team. So it has that green focus. How can we go about these conversations? What can we do to help the climate, et cetera? And we're working within multiple offices. Some are hybrid, some are in person. There's scheduling differences based on role. So we're working on creating events where people can come together, whether it's in the Grand Caymans or in Albany, New York, or in Hartford. And how do we not exclude anybody? It's been very interesting, but also very rewarding too, to be able to figure this out collectively, to build that community, and to really give it as a benefit to both the employees and then something larger outside of that. So as we work through it, I'll be curious to see 5-10 years down the line where we're ending up at that point, if we're all working in the metaverse or what, Harry. But going back to a different question, some employees look to work to pay the bills. Some employees look to pay the bills, but they also want something more, something that can enrich their lives. So how are each of you going about and helping your clients create benefit plans that help them attract and retain these workers? Whether Miami's calling or Colorado, how can we keep these people where they are if we need them to be in a place? And then are you seeing trends vary based on either existing culture or generations? So how are you helping them, attract and retain these workers? And then from those experiences, are there things sticking out, whether it's culture related, generation related, that are coming into play? So I don't know, Jeff, if you want to jump in on that one.
Great question. I think when you look at things like just communications, right? On-demand communications, I think reaching people 24/7 is critical, right? And I think that spans the entire gamut. You look at every age group. I mean, some people want to receive print material. Some people want to receive, they want a QR code. They want to receive it. But the key is to get it in their hands 24/7, right? To access that information, because people are consuming information at different times of the day, different work schedule of the day, right? Where someone may have had a commute for an hour each way, that they've got 2 hours now of other times they can consume information. So from that perspective, I think, the communication piece has been critical to align companies, right? Because they do have so many more employees now outside of their own geographical areas. How do we make sure we connect with our employees across the US or globally? I think that one of the things we've seen, if this kind of alludes to it as well, is, when you look at clients that have, with respect to COVID, I don't want to overplay COVID, but it brought about a lot of things where employers realized that employees were isolated, they were lonely, right? They need to connect. We've seen a much larger increase in enhanced mental health than ever with our clients, right? Where a traditional EAP program just wasn't cutting it, right? How do we meet our employees where they're at? Because they are balancing so much, not just work, but maybe family members that are going through health issues with COVID or otherwise, and just navigating that, right? Managing daycare for kids, right? That was something we never thought about with our employees, right? As much, right? That people dropped their kids off at daycare and came to work. Now it's like, the world's kind of shifted. How do we manage that workload? I think that's important. I think a lot more employers are very focused on being an employer of choice. I've got more clients than ever doing family forming benefits, right? And really meeting their employees where they need to find them in terms of things like adoption or in vitro and things like that. So I think it's caused a lot of employers to look and say, where do we want to spend our dollars, right? So when you think about most employers, payroll is the highest spend, benefits probably second highest spend in an organization. How do we make these benefits stretch and work to our advantage, to our population? And I think that's the part a lot of our employers rely on us to kind of help navigate and guide them through consulting and benchmarking and kind of understand their culture and being aligned in that regard.
Yeah, Simon, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so I can't say anything because I'd be giving away my trade secrets to Jeff and Dale. Just joking. But no, I'd say when our employers are coming to us, it's different, it's unique, and I think words matter. We love talking in terms of benefit design and products, and carriers and vendors and point solutions. And really that's our world. Our clients really want us to solve their problems. And so their problems come in different shapes and forms, meaning they could be solving for a benefit. They could be solving for a time off transformation. So they're presenting, I really see it as a pitch and pair. They're really pitching their problem to us if we have the discipline to listen, and we need to pair it with a solution. And that solution could be vendor related, carrier related, benefit design related. So I think it's being that active listener. As consultants, we naturally want to jump to the solution, right? And so to me, it's, again, flexing that different muscle and, hey, what's the problem? Pitch it, present it, you have it. Then how do we pair it with the solution? And I think that's the difference. We've always done that, and obviously Jeff and Dale do it every day. But I think that's where making sure that listening and the problem comes first, because, again, this targeted, it's just you're solving a benefit or you're just solving a population. It's really not that easy. And I think that listening, that nuance, and thinking differently than just those boxes is something we're required to do. And frankly, I think our clients in the market will push everybody to keep thinking that way.
I love that. I love the pitch and pair concept. It works across, all fields, but especially here, it's important. Active listening is difficult for some, but so important for all of us. Dale, what are you seeing out where you are?
So Jeff handled the kind of the product part of it. I'm going to go kind of higher than that. Years ago, I got my certified financial planning designation when I started in the business, because I realized that I'd been working at a financial planning firm, but left to go in benefits. And I realized the stakes. We're the financial planner to the average American in this country. They don't go call CFPs and stockbrokers. Most everybody protects the risks that our families face. Think of what we do through benefits at work. So the person or the team responsible for building benefits is the financial planner to the average American today. It's where we solve almost all of our risks. We protect our health, our incomes, we protect our life, we protect our ability to retire one day. And I've just always believed in adding more product, because the number, if we get, over there they have this, or over there they have this, and trying to, fill up all the spreadsheets with, more products and more stuff on products, I think we empty people's pockets. There's four main things that people have to have: health insurance, protect your income, buy life insurance, and save money. And if you do those four things in that order, that accommodates most of the eventualities that happen in people's lives. And from there offshoots everything else. And so I've always said, people don't care how something works until they need it. Two things. People don't care how a product works until they need it. But most importantly, all we want to know is, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing with my money? In a 401k, if I have an equity income or a growth in income fund in my 401k, it makes a difference, but I don't care. All I want to know is, am I doing the right thing? And as an industry, if we can begin to learn how to just place people where they need to be and build products with less stuff, but just that solve risk more appropriately and more efficiently, and then teach people how to get people in the right things, and then have the ability to communicate whenever you need it, wherever, as Jeff said, whatever method you want to receive it in, then have it to be one of the best environments that they receive it. I don't care. If you want it this way, if you want it this way or this way, I don't care. But however you want it, it needs to be the best method you've ever been engaged in, because they don't care about it until they need it. And then they want to know that they've done the right thing and how do I solve it. So that was a kind of high level, maybe what you asked for. It's kind of something we believe here.
Yeah, Dale. So actually, it's a great segue to a question that I wanted to ask you all, which we've talked about. We've talked about solutions and design, but you just touched upon people understanding their benefits, right? And almost every study that you see about employer-provided benefit programs has a common theme in it, and that is that employees generally don't understand the benefits that are available to them. I know probably about a year and a half ago now, LIMRA and Ernst & Young did a study, and one of the findings that came out of it was that roughly 2/3 of employees didn't feel that their employer did a very good job communicating the benefit program. It's a huge gap in our industry around the average consumer understanding what's available to them and what decisions they should be making. So I'm curious to hear from you what you all are doing, what your firms are doing to help employers communicate in a way that helps their employees understand making that right decision up front before they need it. And kind of changing that paradigm a little bit. So I don't know who wants to go first on that.
Could I take off on that real quick?
Go for it.
So Harry, this is my heartbeat. My pastor said a great quote. Andy Stanley made a great quote. He said, "Build what you're going to build from an outsider's perspective, not an insider's perspective." It changed our firm. Our industry in the past, we're getting better. Our industry in the past hasn't really cared about an outsider's perspective, only an insider. If you want to believe that, go back and look at the old short-term disability applications. Take your salary, multiply it by 12, divide by 52, multiply by 0.6, divide by 10, multiply by what? I don't even know what I make, right? And we were giving that to frontline workers. We were giving that to people. And your long-term disability, take your salary, divide it by 100. What? So the point is, build what you're going to build from an outsider's perspective, not an insider. Nobody cares what we think. What does the customer build? Our stuff, our technology, our fonts, our colors, our wording, build these things from their perspective, not our perspective. I'll shut up.
No, I love the passion. I know, Simon, you were going to jump in there.
Yeah, and so I'd say, I always say to us, and I think of solutions, and Harry, this might be directed a little bit more to you if you think about this. So if you like it, you better give me credit for it. But I'm just teasing. But when you think about open enrollment, while simple, and again, we get into this habit, it's a pattern. We say it is open enrollment, or we're implementing something new, and new plan design, new time off, new benefit, whatever it is. It's an opportunity to be a commercial and take credit for all the things why you made that decision. So we've partnered with X partner, whether it's a consulting firm or a broker or a vendor or both, to provide X. And then that open enrollment could be regardless of how many employees, let's just say you have 1,000 employees, that could be a positive 1,000 person commercial, or that can go the other way. And so you have to understand the power of a commercial, the power of explaining why you're doing it and being intentional. And why are we being intentional? Again, employers have surveys. They talk about what they're doing. They're talking about what they're needing. It's really important, the intentionality of, we're implementing this with this intention because we heard you. So I think that's important. I think the other part is, and here's why we made this partner selection. It's important. But then the most important thing is execution. That's where the commercial comes in. That commercial's coming either way, but through execution, communication, and setting the right expectations, it's going to be a commercial for something very positive, or you know how the other side goes. So I really think open enrollment messaging, why you're doing it, and when somebody's going through it, the expected outcome, and how you're trying to solve a problem and personalize a solution. I think that's where it can be a commercial for good.
Great. Jeff, did you want to add?
Just add to Dale's point. I mean, you got to meet the employees where they're at. I think that our industry is very acronym driven. And I think a lot of employees just don't live in that world, right? And so I think the insurance companies traditionally do a really good job of sending lots of bulk mail out and lots of billing statements out to employees that just don't get it, right? And so, it's little things. Like I said, the on-demand communications is critical. How we customize those communication pieces is that it's customizable to the audience we're with. I think we've done some things with certain environments where, really just glossary terms, to be candid, health literacy, helping people understand how plans work. As simple as if we're going to have a plan that was a traditional PPO and then a high deductible health plan. Let's give a real example in a meeting that says, if you have a baby, here's how plan A works, here's how plan B works, and walk through the actual plan designs and what your spend would be, right? What your costs would look like. People can relate to that. I think that, I think people want things quickly. I think Dale's 100% right. I think most people go through their careers, not all, but the ones that are healthy do, that don't pay a lot of attention until boom, a claim hits, and all of a sudden like, how does all this work? Because I haven't really been paying attention for the past 10 years, right? And then it gets real fast for people, right? And so, like Simon said, there's lots of tools out there, decision support tools to different things. But again, those are products. I think you got to figure out what your client's trying to accomplish and fix. I always look at what's your client trying to accomplish, avoid, or fix, and we can help figure that out by asking good questions and then meet the needs of the employees where they're at. And it may vary, right? Like I said, that light manufacturing client, how we speak to one half of the organization is different than how we speak to the other half in the sense of the health literacy part. They consume healthcare differently. And how do we reach those populations and get them what they need so it makes sense to them?
What's that saying? You can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But you can give them salt and make them thirsty.
That's true. That is so true. So I guess to flip the conversation a little bit, we've talked about the employee side of things, and we have the insights from each of you. But to dig deeper a little bit into the broker side, we talked about how there's a rapid change of pace in technology. There's a change in workforce dynamics. It's the culture play. A lot of outside and inside forces are causing change, and they've caused change, especially over the last few years in particular. So what should brokers start planning for now? Like what should they be planning for? What should they be thinking about in order to respond to all of these dynamics that are changing around them?
We're hiring.
Dale, I hear a thought.
We're hiring a consulting firm to start looking at some kind of next gen thinking of where early generations are, even before, not even in the workforce yet. Where are they thinking? What are they thinking? And I'm too old to be thinking of where they are, but that's why we're about to hire somebody to do this.
Jeff, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that companies that are thinking about technology, if you're thinking about it and you haven't done anything, you're probably behind, right? We have a technical advisor group with inside of Alliant that helps our clients navigate. There's just so much, right? There's the human capital management side of it, the learning and development side of things, and making sure you have a system. That's the one thing employers can get caught up in, is there's so many different systems to look at, right? Whether on a grand scale or smaller scale, depending on the size they are as an employer. I think that the one thing is for certain is we got to make it easier to consume healthcare decisions, right? And I think that's the part that'll be interesting. I think you've got it, and it's complex, right? Employers are dealing with who's the right payroll vendor. If you've met one, let me know, because I've yet to meet one, right? So the truth be told is every vendor is going to look differently for every environment. The key is, can they get to their employee population with content? Like I said, and I keep using the word consumable. How does the employee get to something quickly and efficiently? We've created some options for our clients to consume information via, mobile app, things like that, which is helpful. Not every employer wants that, right? So again, it's making sure that there's not a one size fits all when you talk technology. I think you've got to figure out what that looks like for each individual employer group. But I think technology is here to stay. And we've got to figure out a way to make it easier for employees to navigate that, in a hybrid environment. They're not just coming to the office and can pop on a computer, right? How do they get that data? It's really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if I could jump in, this has been just a fun and illuminating conversation. But as we move to wrap it up, I just want to ask Harry, anything you want to share, any final question or thought that you want to highlight after this really great discussion?
Yeah, Todd, no final question, but I just wanted to highlight a few comments that I heard along the way, and I think one from each of our guests, right? I heard that we are the financial planners of the average consumer, and I really like that because it is absolutely true. The average consumer relies on their employer in so many ways to protect the risks, and so I love that quote. I heard very early in the conversation, outsourcing culture. Boy, that is well said. That as you bring together a solution of various partners and solution providers for an employer, that employer is really outsourcing their culture, and that needs to be integrated into their decision, and execution is critical. And I also heard balancing act come up a number of times, and that is so true, right? Every company is different. They have a mix of employees that's very different, and helping the employer meet their employees where they are and finding that balancing act of everything from where they work to how they communicate, I think is just critically important for all of us, both in the in the brokerage community as well as carriers and other solution providers. So just really great comments. I want to thank each of you for joining us. I know that your clients are in good hands. I can tell from the responses that we had today. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it. So that's it, Todd.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Harry, for those insights. And Harry, Laura, thank you guys as always. Dale, Jeff, and Simon, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. And I want to thank the audience. Thanks so much for tuning in. We've got a lot more fun conversations coming your way, so keep an eye on your podcast feeds. But for now, that is all at the Working Forward podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll speak with you soon.
You're listening to Working Forward, Future of Work podcast series. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Symetra Life Insurance Company or its affiliates. The host is not affiliated with Symetra Life Insurance Company and/or any of its affiliates and is solely responsible for the content.